Woman gives birth to special-looking baby. Doctor is shocked when doing a DNA test. Karen felt like she was going to give birth, so her husband Frank quickly drove her to the hospital. Karen was in labor for 48 hours when she finally gave birth. But when the doctor saw what she gave birth to, he immediately turned pale. He did not know what to say. The baby was carried away, and Karen was told they needed to run some tests to make sure the baby was fine. After hours, the doctor returned. This cannot be good. His whole face has gone red, and he can barely look Karen or her husband Frank in the eye. They have never seen him like this before. What is going on? When he finally starts to talk, all he can do is stutter. "I'm so sorry." The doctor told the parents that they needed to run some more tests. Karen couldn't contain herself anymore. She had to see her child, but the doctor said it might be too dangerous for the child. He had to get answers. Karen begged to see her child. The doctor would not budge. He did not even want to tell him anything. Frank got a little angry as well. He got up and told the doctor nobody would stop him from seeing his child. The doctor was shocked. Frank walked over to the research wing of the hospital. The doctor did not expect this, but he called security to make sure Frank was stopped. Frank did not struggle because he knew it could only end badly. He was eventually escorted out of the hospital. But Karen had to stay. Karen was escorted to another room. She asked where Frank was, but he was sent home. Karen had to stay for additional questioning. They needed to get more information to determine what was happening with the child. Karen was asked a lot of questions about her pregnancy, but wouldn't answer at first. Only her baby was on her mind. The nurse then told Karen that it was important for the survival of her baby that she would answer. Karen had no idea it was this serious. Karen was asked if she was sure that Frank was the father. Karen was shocked. How could they ask this of her? Of course, Frank was the father. The nurse felt like Karen had something to hide from them. Karen did not tell the whole story. Karen started crying when she was pressured. A lot happened before and during the pregnancy. She did not want to tell anyone about it. Did she just put her child's life in danger due to her own dangerous lifestyle? The nurse told Karen that if she did not want to share, she shouldn't, but the nurse assured Karen that she had nothing to fear. Everything that they would discuss would remain between them. Then Karen started talking about her past. Karen almost couldn't speak. It was so difficult for her to tell what she had done. She had a wild lifestyle before meeting Frank. She drank and partied a lot. Frank managed to get her to slow down. But it could have been too late. She got pregnant by surprise. During the pregnancy, she often had bad stomach cramps that she could not explain. But the doctor assured her every time that all was good. Karen thought this was normal for pregnancy. Did the doctor overlook something? When the nurse looked at past tests that other doctors ran, she saw something weird. A lot of information was redacted. It was almost like they were trying to cover something up. They had to get to the bottom of this. Karen still had not realized what truly was going on. The nurse had called a doctor back in. She asked him about the test results. However, the doctor who ran the tests was fired 2 weeks ago. Was this connected? The doctor kept reassuring Karen that the baby was still fine. But they had to figure out if it could survive without being taken care of. The baby was definitely a special case for the hospital. Then the doctor told Karen she herself had to stay during the night. Karen decides she will not struggle anymore. She had a feeling it was better for her and her baby to work with the doctor. Karen also had something else in mind for that night that she did not tell anyone else about. Karen was obviously not locked into her room during the night. So she decided she would get up out of bed and look for her baby. They cannot keep the baby from her any longer. She had to see what was going on. This is something she would regret a lot later. Karen knows roughly where in the hospital they are keeping the babies. When the nurse did her last round, Karen sneaked out of bed. It was finally time to get answers. Karen sneaked her way to the floor above. Adrenaline was pumping through her veins. She is almost there. Security was doing its rounds, so Karen had to be careful. She still had not changed, so she could not say that she worked for the hospital. Then she saw the room with the babies. There was one problem: the door was locked. Karen realized she needed a keycard to enter the room. This was the only way for her to get inside. She had a feeling she knew where to get one, but she had to be extremely careful. She was still weak from giving birth, so if they caught her, she couldn't run. The only way to get the keycard was in the security room. Karen had a feeling there might be some spare keycards there. She had a plan. When security was doing their rounds, she would quickly grab one of the walls. By some miracle, she managed to get the keycard. It was time to get to her baby. Karen quickly goes back to the baby's room. She swipes the keycard. Then she let loose a sigh of relief. The door opened. Now she had to find her child. This was difficult for her since she had not seen her child. Luckily, names were on the units. She enters the room and starts looking around. Her baby did not seem to be here at all. Then in the corner of her eye, she sees a special unit. This must be it. She walks over to this when and falls to her knees. When Karen sees her child, she actually starts crying. Then she lets go with a loud scream. She doesn't care if anyone hears her. She was overwhelmed with emotions. She just could not contain it. Then she heard footsteps in the hallway. The doctor and a couple of nurses came running inside. They saw Karen on the floor next to the unit with her child. They thought of the worst. Karen was in total shock when the nurses sat down next to her. The doctor sighed. This was exactly why they did not want Karen to come close to her child before they could get answers. The child was still alive, but now they needed to explain something to Karen they had no answers for. Karen demands an explanation now. She wants to know why her baby looks like that. The doctor has no answers for her, so she gets even more upset. The doctor tells Karen that the results of the test will probably come tomorrow. Karen does not want to hear it and causes a scene. The doctor urges Karen to go to bed and get some sleep. They even tell her they want to give her something so she can sleep tight this night. Karen does not want to hear it. She is extremely stubborn. The doctor has no other option than to force Karen to bed. She is locked in as well for her own safety. That night, Karen can't sleep at all. She only thinks about what she had seen that night. Her baby did not look good at all. This could be a true disaster for her and Frank. She wanted so bad for it to be the next day. The doctor would finally have some answers. Or so she thought. The doctor looks very concerned the next day when stepping inside the room. He is deadly serious. He tells Karen to call Frank to come in. She needs to assure the doctor that she can keep calm, and Frank has to be calm as well. Frank comes in and immediately starts confronting Karen. "What have you done?" The doctor urges Frank to be quiet and sit down. He had no right to attack Karen like this. He did not even have a clue what was going on. Frank wants to go, but he doesn't believe that this baby is his. Karen assures him she has done nothing wrong. Then she demands from the doctor that he does a test to see if Frank is the baby's biological father. The doctor agrees. Frank was asked by the doctor to give a DNA sample. Frank's was confused, but he agreed. He wanted to get an answer. The doctor figured if Frank gave his DNA, he might figure out what was going on with the baby as well. The doctor told Frank and Karen they had to wait a couple of hours for the test results to come in. Karen thought it was better to wait separately from Frank's, because Frank was still fuming with anger that he couldn't contain. Then the doctor came back. The doctor had a closed envelope with him. With the DNA results, Karen was asked to come back in. The doctor was nervous about this as well. If Frank turned out not to be the father, what could Karen possibly have done? When he opened the envelope, she turned pale. The doctor turned to Frank. Frank started sweating about what the doctor had to say. Read the test results very carefully. He had thought it would have a different outcome, but Frank was concerned since the doctor was so in shock. The doctor said that they had found nothing extremely strange. Frank is indeed the father, but they could not find any DNA from Karen. Karen was extremely confused. The doctor had no answer for this, but told them they would figure it out today. Karen wants to see her child now. This time the doctor agreed to walk Frank and Karen to the baby room. When Frank sees his child for the first time, he is totally baffled. He did not have such an extreme reaction as Karen, but he still had many questions. The doctor assures the couple that they are working around the clock to provide them with answers. Multiple doctors are working overtime in the lab to figure out what is going on with their child and the strange DNA results. The last thing that the doctors think of is a skin test. They take a sample of the skin of baby, which does not hurt. This could also take a few hours, but the doctors are hopeful that this will give them a definite answer. Then Karen acted up again. She suddenly claims their baby is probably swapped and she looks for her child. Frank thought Karen had gone completely mad. The doctor tries to stop Karen, but eventually just lets her do her thing to come to a realization. Karen is still very much in denial. She does not want to keep the baby because she says it isn't hers. Frank and the doctor let her rage on for a couple of moments. Then finally, Karen sits on the floor and just gives up. Frank then tries to encourage Karen to care for and keep the baby. The doctor told him the baby is healthy and didn't seem to suffer from something life-threatening. The only thing is that everything took longer than expected, and they will have the results tomorrow. Frank and Karen decide to indeed go home without the baby. They both thought long and hard that night about what they would do. The next day, everything would be revealed. They could hardly wait for so long. But they had to. They had been waiting in front of the phone since they woke up. Any minute the doctor could call. They tried calling themselves, but the doctor was too busy to come to the phone. Then the phone finally rang. They pick up and there is a lot of tension in the room. Karen puts the doctor on speaker. He starts talking about what they had done and reveals that they finally have an answer that they want to share to them in person. Karen and Frank quickly jumped in the car. During the whole drive to the hospital, Karen is very tense. She hardly speaks to Frank. She has no idea what to expect, but she feels like she will not like the answer that the doctor will give her. After a drive that feels like hours, they finally arrive. They enter the doctor's office and the doctor tells them to sit down. The nurse brings the baby in and he tells them their baby is perfectly healthy. They also have an explanation for why the baby looks so special. Karen is now on the edge of her seat. The baby suffers from a rare skin disease. It is not really a disease, but the doctor explains that the baby will actually slowly get better with time and the skin color will change. Karen and Frank are relieved. The DNA was explained as well. They made the mistake of not taking Karen's DNA, so they did not have a match. What did you think of this story? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like the video and subscribe. See you next time.